NISSA Resurgent Animus has been making a huge impact on many formats. And while many people are pairing this with elementals like Omnath, Fury, and Solitude, in today's video, we are going to be pairing it with an old fan favorite, BLOODBRAID Elf. The reason that NISSA pairs so well with BLOODBRAID Elf is because whenever a land drop enters the battlefield, you get a mana, but the second time, you can reveal an elf or an elemental card and put it into your hand. Meaning that if we play a fetch land, we get 2 triggers off landfall, meaning that we can reveal a BLOODBRAID Elf into our hand and make 3 mana off of NISSA. And when looking at the rest of the deck, NISSA can still find Fury, which is a powerful elemental. But not only that, the mana made off NISSA can provide for explosive turn 4s, or even turn 3 if we ramp it out with Ragavan. And while NISSA looks out of place in a JUND list, you are going to be seeing why this card carried our deck in multiple games. Match 1, we're on the play with a great 7. We'll fetch Shock and a Blood Crypt and go turn 1 Ragavan. Opponent goes turn 1 Plains into a Sentinel. We draw as NISSA for turn, we'll attack in with Rag. An opponent takes the hit. We exile Nettlesis, and then we'll play out a land, touching a forest and playing out NISSA. Opponent plays an Inkmoth into a Stoneforge Mystic, grabbing a Sword of Fire Ice and casting a Memnite. We draw another Ragavan, we'll play our land and then fetch, making a bunch of mana, and finding a Fury, which will run out. God, NISSA's so sweet! And then we'll attack in for 5. Opponent plays a Saga into a Thopter, then cast a Gingerbrute into a Sigardizade. We draw another BLOODBRAID Elf, we'll cast that out, cascade into an Inquisition, and we'll take the Sword of Fire and Ice and attack in with the team. And they chump block our Fury with a Gingerbrute, going down to 5, and we find a hammer off their top, and we'll pass back to the opponent. Opponent plays Plains passing. We find another NISSA, we'll cast out another BLOODBRAID Elf, and that finds Lightning Bolt, we'll bolt the opponent and then attack in. And opponent scoops him up. Let's get on to sideboarding. We're gonna take out 2 Thoughtseize and 3 BLOODBRAID Elves for EEs, Brotherhood Ends, and Ancient Grudge. Game 2, we'll mull our 7, and we'll keep our 7 putting back a Forgotten Cave. Opponent goes turn 1 Plains into a Sentinel. We draw Boseiju and play Din. Opponent plays a Saga and attacks in for 1. Draw another Bolt, we'll play out Peatland and hold up our Bolt. Opponent plays a Clearing and attacks in, we will bolt the Sentinel, and in response they Blacksmith Skillet, and post combat they play out a Shadow Spear. Find a land, we'll lead on that, cast out our Inquisition, paying for the Sentinel, and we'll take their Pure Steel Paladin, then fetch Shock in a Stomping Ground and bolt down the Sentinel, which they use Blacksmith Skill to protect. On their upkeep, they make a Construct token with Saga, picking up a Relic and playing a Plains into a Memnite, then attacking in for 1. We draw a Forgotten Cave, we'll play out our Boseiju, then play our Kolaghan's Command, destroying the Construct and dealing 2 to S per Sentinel, paying for the Sentinel attack, and on our Incept they pop Relic. Now it goes Memnite into equipping the Memnite, attacking us for 2. We draw Terminate, we'll cycle our Forgotten Cave, finding a Ragavan, then we'll sack our Peatland, finding Boseiju, and pass back. Opponent plays an Inkmoth Nexus, crack Clearing, and attacks in for 3, so we'll bolt down the Memnite, only taking 1 instead. We top deck a Tarmogoyf, we'll play that out into our Ragavan. Opponent plays a Plains into a Sophie. We draw land, we'll terminate the Memnite, attack in for 6, exiling a Colossus Hammer, playing land passing. Opponent plays a Clearing and animates Inkmoth, and they equip it with the Sophie, and attack in for 3, so we'll Boseiju the Inkmoth. We find a NISSA for turn, we'll animate our Din, and attack in for 10, and they're down to 4. On our instep they crack their Clearing, and then they concede. Let's get into match number 2. Match 2 we're on the play, and hand looks amazing. We'll go turn 1 Din into a Ragavan. Opponent goes tap land into Memnite, and we top deck a NISSA, so we will Shock in a Blood Crypt and terminate the Memnite, and attack in for 2, exiling a Frogmite. Opponent plays out a Saga into a Relic. We draw a Forgotten Cave for turn, we'll attack in with Ragavan, exiling a Thoughtcast, and we'll cast out our NISSA, play a Verdant and fetch, Shocking in a Stomping Ground, making a black and a red, and drawing into a Fury. So we'll cycle our Forgotten Cave, finding an Inquisition, then Inquisition the opponent. While their hand's very weak, we'll take Ornithopter, and then Boseiju their Urza Saga. Opponent plays a tapped land. We draw a Tarmogoyf for turn, we'll attack in for 5. Opponent takes it, and we exile a Thought Monitor, which we will cast out because of Ragavan. And sadly, we don't find a land. On our instep, they pop Relic. Opponent plays out a Darksteel Citadel into a Springleaf Drum, then cast out a Cranial Plating into a Frogmite, and a Sojourner's Companion. We find a Bolt, we will bolt the Frogmite, evoke out our Fury, killing the Sojourner Companion, attack in for 7. Ooh, exile and a Cranial Plating. We'll cast out our Tarmogoyf, passing back. And opponent scoops him up. Let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out a Bolt, 2 Ragavans, a Terminate, and a Riveteer's Charm for 2 EEs, 2 Brotherhoods in, and an Ancient Grudge. Game 2, our hand's risky, but in Rin we trust. Opponent goes turn 1 tapped Artifact Land, and we find a land. We'll fetch Shock in a Tomb and Inquisition the opponent, and we'll take their Cranial Plating. Opponent plays a Treasure Vault into a Springleaf Drum, into a Relic. God, we find a Brotherhood in, so we'll fetch out a Mountain, then cast out our Renin Sick. God, this is going to be so sick. And we'll tick up picking up Bloodstained Mire. They untap activating Relic again, play out a Springleaf Drum into a Shadow Spear, playing Mistfold Bridge into a Sojourner's Companion. And we find another Rin. We'll fetch Shock in a Blood Crypt, pick up on Bloodstained Mire, and then cast a Brotherhood in, destroying all artifacts CMC 3 or less. In response, they pop Relic, and oh my board wipe. Opponent attacks us for 4, then cycles a Companion, finding a land, playing it out for turn. We draw a Goyf, we'll play out NISSA, play our fetch land, fetching for a Swamp, making red and green, finding a BLOODBRAID Elf. We'll tick up on our Mire, and then cast out a Kolaghan's Command, destroying their creature and making them discard. And they discard a Nettlesis. This is so sweet. We draw a Blood Crypt for turn, we'll play out our Bloodstained Mire, making a green, fetch grabbing Stomping Ground, making another green, finding a Fury, we'll tick up on Bloodstained Mire, then cast out our Bloodbraid Elf, and we will not cast our Wrenn. Then cast Goyf and attack in for 6. Opponent plays out a Plating, we draw a Spyro for turn, we will ping the opponent, then cast out another Wrenn, pinging the opponent again, and attacking in for lethal. What a sweet match 2, let's get into match number 3. Match 3, we're on the draw and hand's a little too weak, so we got a Mole. Our 6 is much stronger, we'll put back a Rag. Opponent goes turn 1 Forest into a Footfalls. We draw a Goyf, we will fetch Shock, and playing out our Ragavan. Opponent plays a Triumph, we find Boseiju and attack in with Rag. Exiling a Dead Gone, then we'll play a Boseiju and cast out our Goyf. Opponent plays a tap Steam Vents into Evoked Out Fury, killing our Ragavan and Tarmogoyf. We top deck a Thoughtseize, we'll fire that off, and we'll take their Mystical Dispute, then fetch Shock in a Stomping Ground and cast our Kolagon Mam, making them discard and picking up our Tarmogoyf, and the opponent discards Otawara. They play out a Scalding Tarn, we find a Ragavan turn, we'll play out Ragavan into a Tarmogoyf. In their upkeep, they cast out the Footfalls, then they cast out a 5/5 Murktide, and we draw a Den of the Bugbear. We'll play out our Den and then cast a Spyro, finding 2 lands. Opponent attacks in for 5. We top deck a Bolt, and at this point we are too far behind, so we'll scoop them up and get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out 4 Bolts for 3 EEs and a Chalice. Game 2, our 7's perfect. We'll lead on turn 1 Den into a Ragavan. Opponent goes turn 1 Foothills, and we find Bloodstained Mire. We attack in for 2, and they have a Dead Gone, killing our Rag. So we'll play out a Bloodstained Mire passing. Opponent plays a Misty into a Suspended Falls. We draw Peatland, we'll play our Foothills, fetching a Forest, then play out our Nissa. Opponent plays an Island into a Shardless Agent, cascading into the Footfalls. We find a Terminate, we'll play Foothills, then fetch, triggering Nissa twice, making a green and a black, drawing into a Bloodbraid Elf. So we'll cast that out, which cascades into a Tarmogoyf, and then we'll play out our EE and pop it right away, attacking in for 6. And they take the trade, going down to 13. Opponent plays Steam Vents and suspends another Rhino, then cast out a 5/5 Murktide. And we top deck another Bloodbraid Elf, so we'll terminate the Murktide, shock in a Blood Crypt, making a red, and then casting another Bloodbraid, which finds a Seasoned Pyromancer. Oh my god, what value. And then we'll attack in for lethal. Let's get on to game number 3. Game 2, our hand looks great. Opponent goes turn 1 Breeding Pool, and we find an EE. We'll fetch Shock in a Tomb, and then Thoughtseize the opponent. Yeah, and we're gonna have to take the Blood Moon here. Opponent plays an Island, and we draw a Ragavan. We'll play our Mountain, and then cast a Verdant 6, and we'll tick up on our Verdant. Opponent shocks in a Stomping Ground into a Shardless Agent, casting out a Footfalls. We find another EE, we'll cast one out, play our Foothills, fetching out a Forest, picking up with Wrenn, blowing up our EE, and then casting out a Ragavan. Opponent plays Mountain passing. We top deck a Goyf, we'll play out Verdant, fetching out a Swamp, then taking up Wrenn on our Verdant. In response, they cast Endurance, putting back our Graveyard. And then we'll cast out both of our Tarmogoyfs. Opponent does nothing, and we find a Fury off the top. We'll fetch out a Blood Crypt and cast our Fury, dealing 4 damage to their Endurance. And then we'll attack in with our Ragavan, and they block with Shardless, then bounce it back to hand with Otawara. So we'll tick up on our Wooded Foothills with Wrenn, passing back. Opponent cast out the Shardless into a Footfalls. We draw a Bloodbraid, we'll lead on an EE, and opponent scoops them up. Let's get on to match number 4. Match 4, we're on the draw, and we got a Molar 7. And our 6 is quite powerful, we'll put back K-Command. Opponent goes Boseiju into a Grazer, putting in a Saga. We draw an Inquisition, we'll fire one of them off, taking an Explore. Opponent plays out another Saga, passing. We find a Bloodbraid, we will play out our Tarmogoyf, and on our end step, they make a Construct. They float a mana and find an Amulet, and play Vesuva, copying Urza's Saga. Draw a land for turn, we will fire off an Inquisition, and we'll take a Grazer, then cast a Ragavan, and play a land for turn. And on our end step, they make another Construct. Opponent floats mana off Saga, grabbing another Amulet, then goes to combat, attacking us for 8, and we will double block one of the Constructs. And in response, they make another Construct, which will kill our Tarmogoyf. We draw a Terminate, but we're going to fetch out Forest and go for a Bloodbraid. And it cascades into a Bolt, so we'll bolt down a Grazer. They make another Construct, grabbing an Expedition map, then play out another Saga. And at this point, we are too far behind. We're going to scoop it up and get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out 3 Bolts for Blood Moon and Ancient Grudge. Game 2, we have a Blood Moon, so we'll keep. We play turn 1 Mire. Opponent goes Forest into a Grazer, putting in an Urza's Saga. And on their end step, we'll cycle our Forgotten Cave, finding another Boseiju. Top deck a Ragavan for turn, we'll play that out, and play out a Mire. And no land drop for the opponent. We top deck a Goyf, we'll fetch out a Swamp, play our Forest into a Blood Moon, killing their Urza's Saga. Opponent plays out a Sunhome, find another Ragavan, we'll play out Boseiju, and then cast a Bloodbraid, grabbing a Wrenn 6. Then we'll attack in. Opponent blocks the Ragavan, so we will ping it down with our Wrenn 6 post-combat. Opponent plays Gruul Turf into a Dryad. We draw a Bolt, we'll Boseiju their Dryad, pick up returning Forgotten Cave, cycle it, drawing Fury, and attacking in for 5. And then we'll cast out our Tarmogoyf. Opponent Boseiju's our Blood Moon, then cast out a Dryad. And on their end step, we will Bolt them, then cast an Inquisition that we drew, and their hand looks pretty funny. Then we'll tick up on a Boseiju and kill this Dryad. And opponent scoops them up. Let's get on to game 3. Game 3, our hand's a little too weak, so we're going down to 6. And our 6 is quite powerful, we'll put back an Inquisition. Opponent goes turn 1 Garden into an Amulet. We draw a Cave, we will fetch out a Swamp, and Thoughtseize the opponent. We'll take their Amulet of Vigor, play out a Forest. We draw a Spyro, we'll play Cave, passing back. And on our end step, they copy their Amulet. Opponent plays out a Turf, making 4 mana, then cast a Summoner's pack, which picks up an Arboreal Grazer, which puts in a Valakut, and now they can cast out their Primeval Titan. It grabs Slayer Stronghold and Boros Garrison, giving their Primeval Titan 4+0 and haste. Then they grab Vesuva and Sunhome, which can give this thing double strike, so our opponent had a turn 2 kill. Let's get on to match number 5. Match 5, we're on the play, and hand looks great. We'll go turn 1 Overgrown Tomb and Inquisition the opponent, and we'll take their Profane Tutor. Opponent goes turn 1 Tomb into a Thoughtseize, and they take our Renensic. We draw another Goyf for turn, we'll run one of them out. Opponent casts out another Thoughtseize, taking our Lightning Bolt. Then they play out a Swamp into a Cookbook, and we top deck another Bolt. We'll attack in for 4, play out our Boseiju, and cast out a Goyf. Opponent cast a Bone Shards, discarding Brutality, killing a Goyf, and then they play out an Asmo, which picks up an Underworld Cookbook. We draw a Peat Land for turn, we'll play it out and crack it, drawn into a Riveteer's Charm, and then we'll attack in for 5. Opponent takes it down to 4, and then we'll bolt their Asmo, and on our end step they discard a Cookbook, making a food. And opponent scoops them up. Let's get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out Seasoned Pyromancer, K-Command, 2 Furies, Bloodbraid Elves, and Riveteer's Charm for 3 EE, Endurances, and an Ancient Crud. Game 2, our hand's a little risky, but we'll keep. Opponent goes turn 1 Swamp into a Cookbook, discarding Oval Chase and making a food. We draw an EE for turn, we'll shock in our Blood Crypt and Inquisition the opponent, and we'll take their Asmo. Opponent plays out a Blood Fountain into an Urza's Saga, then makes a food. And we end up finding a green source, which is great, and then we'll play out an EE for 1, playing a tap Tomb. Opponent shocks in a Tomb, holding up Saga activation. We draw a third EE, we'll play out our Mountain, and then blow up the Engineer Explosives. And in response, I activate Cookbook. On our end step, they make a Construct, and they make another in their main phase. Then grabs a Cookbook, discarding a Devil. They attack in for 7 and play a tap Blood Crypt. We'll run our EE for 0 and blow it up. Then Thoughtseize the opponent. Ooh, not a great take. Opponent plays a Swamp, then activates Cookbook, discarding Daredevil, and in response, we'll evoke out our Endurance. And we'll put their Grave on the bottom. Then they buy Gigantha. We draw a Tarmogoyf, we'll play that out. Opponent plays out their Boseiju into Gigantha. We draw another Bolt, so we'll double bolt Gigantha, then attack in for 4. Opponent plays out a Swamp, and then suspends a Profane Tutor. We draw a Swamp, we'll attack in 5, then play our Swamp, passing back. And on our end step, they sack Cookbook, buying back Gigantha. They play out a Verdant into Gigantha. We draw an Inquisition, we'll attack in with Goyf, and opponent takes it down to 2. And on our end step, they crack their food, going up to 4. And their upkeep, they cast their Tutor, and they cast out a Fatal Push, killing our Goyf. Attacking us for 5, we're down to 4. And we top deck an Answer Grudge, so we will Inquisition them and then concede. Seen an Asmo. So let's get on to game number 3. Game 3, we'll keep a risky 7. We'll go turn 1 Blood Crypt into a Ragavan. Opponent goes turn 1 Saga, and we find a Terminate. We attack in for 2, exiling a land and making a treasure, and then we'll fire off this Inquisition. And thankfully we did. We'll take the Goryo's Vengeance. Opponent plays out a Cookbook into a Swamp. We draw an EE, we'll attack in with Ragavan, exiling an Asmo, and then we'll cast out a Goyf. Opponent floats a mana with Saga, grabbing an Underworld Cookbook and playing out another Saga, then puts Gigantha into their hand. We top deck up a Boseiju, we'll attack in for 6, and in combat they discard their Emrakul, which shuffles in their graveyard, making Goyf only a 2/3. Then we exile another land, we'll play out Boseiju, cast out Ancient Grudge, killing a Cookbook, and in response they discard a Cookbook, making a food, and then we will flash it back, killing their other Cookbook. Opponent plays Blooming Marsh, holding up Saga activation. We draw a land, we'll play that out, play EE for 0, then attack in for 5, and they make a Construct to block, so we will pop our EE, bolt the opponent, which grows the Goyf to a 4/5, meaning we deal 6 to them, and then we'll bolt off the treasure token, killing the opponent, ending it with a 4/1. Pretty sweet league. Overall, I do think NISSA was quite powerful, and this deck overall was quite cool, so I hope you all enjoyed this video. Please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.